I appreciate the chance to be speaking to your group tonight and to all your neighborhood leaders listening. I've done a lot of work throughout my career in East San Jose. I'm proud of the work I've done. I've gotten an opportunity to meet many of you along the way, and I'm excited to be helping the developers with this project, mostly in the capacity of meeting with neighborhood and business leaders in the community and discussing the future of this site, and how the development can be a boon to the neighborhood and really be something that is inviting and that the community is proud of. So with that, I want to run through a brief presentation that I've created. So we titled this intentionally Community Input and Feedback, and that's really the focus of tonight's meeting. And my purpose for being here is that we want to hear from the community, from all aspects of the community, really. But where better to start than community leaders that have been involved for decades in East San Jose and in helping to shape growth and economic development along the way. We really value your input and hope that this is the beginning of many more meetings where we can have substantive conversations. So to give some clarity on the site we're talking about here, is Pleasant Hills, is 114 acres. It was a former golf course that's been closed now almost 20 years. It lies across White Road from Lake Cunningham, and is also, it's worth mentioning, in close proximity to Reed Hillview Airport and to East Ridge. And we expect, future development at those two sites over the next, over the coming decades. And we see our site as an opportunity to be a leader in that regard, and hopefully, physically express what the neighborhood, how it wants to see itself and how it wants to grow over the coming decades. The developers are Terrascape Ventures. The founders are Tony Ariola and Mark Lazzarini, both San Jose residents. Mark lives in Japantown, and Tony lives in East San Jose. Has been a long time East San Jose resident. They're a local company, offices in downtown San Jose, and have done a lot of work developing infill sites throughout San Jose, including Evergreen, where they've developed multiple infill sites. Wanted to outline the community outreach process as far as we can see into the future. The developers filed a general plan amendment in December of last year. We have been speaking with the city since then about a process moving forward. And one of the items that staff brought to council was a community outreach process that would include a third-party facilitator and regular reports to the city council as far as the feedback that they receive. The first meeting was scheduled to be around October. I think we're now expecting that will soon be pushed back to December. Gives us a couple more months, but we're already running into delays. So I just wanted to use that to emphasize that these dates are the best we could come up with so far, but things are likely to change. We estimate that the city will produce an environmental impact report notice of preparation by the end of this year. That will help to define the scope of a potential development project at this site and initiate an opportunity to study the impacts of development at that capacity. So that is still months off, and there is plenty of study to be done on what the impacts will be. In spring and probably into summer, we anticipate 2 more community outreach meetings that will be as inclusive as possible, and hopefully be able to get community members that don't ordinarily participate in the discussion. That's something that we'll be working with the city and Council Member Candelas's office to try and achieve. That will culminate with a staff presentation to City Council. We anticipate in August of next year, and that will summarize the outreach that has been heard, and will try and give some more clarity as to the density and the look and the zoning of what a future development at Pleasant Hills will look like. So I promise this would be brief, and that's intentional. I want to open it up to questions and comments. And before we do, I wanted to emphasize that I am more than happy, in fact, eager to come and meet with you individually or with your respective neighborhood association and its leadership. There's no limit to the amount of meetings I'd love to have and the input I'd like to take as a developer's representative, and that will be parallel to the city's process, where it will have a third-party facilitator to collect input. I think the more input, the better the project ultimately. The more the project will feel like a community asset and will benefit the community in the long term. So I truly believe that. I'm proud to be taking on this role, and would love to be meeting with you face to face. I prefer that. So if we can do that soon and just get a cup of coffee and talk and meet and hear your concerns and answer questions, I would love that chance.
Thank you. So attendees, please pose your questions or comments using the Q&A feature. I will promote you to panelists. That means allow you to share your audio and video individually so that you can do so. If you prefer not to share your audio and video, as Janet just did, then I will read your questions and comments for you. And I'll go ahead and start with the first one, which is, how will community input be weighted?
That's a question I really can't answer, because that will be the job of the third-party facilitator. And my understanding is the city has identified, well, they first opened up the contract for bid and received 2 bids, and have chosen are close to selecting their chosen bidder, and get them on board. My experience working with those third-party facilitators that are qualified and on the city's list of approved vendors is that they're amazing at what they do, and that they try and capture all input, but I think they also take that opportunity to try and find some consensus and see where there's agreement and where there are many voices saying the same thing, and they amplify those points within their reports. And so as part of their process, I think you will see what the evolution of their presentations over the 3 community meetings, and that they will capture the input that they heard and progress it into a second meeting where further input can be taken. And so I think there are opportunities throughout the process to be able to look back and talk about things that maybe weren't captured, that weren't appropriately weighted in your mind, and make sure that those are discussed and analyzed and included and presented to council. But really, it's going to be the job of a third-party facilitator to I suppose add weight to any specific inputs that they receive.
All right, and next is Trudy.
Hi, good evening. Trudy from District 5 United and the Mount Pleasant Neighborhood Association. Do you envision both owner-occupied units as well as rentals, and how will the property be managed? both the lived-in units, the commercial units, and the grounds? Will there be an HOA for all of that?
Great questions. And I hate to tell you that it's so early in the process that we haven't thought about what the owner composition or owner renter composition would be. We're still at such a beginning phase of this that we're thinking about general plan designation, we're thinking about zoning, and we're thinking about environmental review. We're thinking about process and timelines. But these are questions that I think we've got a year before need to give serious thought about what that composition would look like. I imagine that there will be some managing association. I also imagine that it might have broader authority, given that it's a large community. That there might be infrastructure that is within their purview, and that there's some type of maintenance district to go along with it. These are things that are all sort of being contemplated, but then sort of obviously put on the back burner because we're just not there yet. So I think that being able to define what it is that you would like to see as far as how the grounds will be managed and what the association may look like and how it's managed and funded, I think is valuable input at this stage in the process.
Thank you.
So I'll read Janet's next question. Is there a trigger point that would provide the developer to file a developer's remedy for this project?
Short answer is no. There's no trigger point, I suppose. What I've seen as far as trigger points that developers are using when they're implementing this developer's remedy are flat rejections from the city. They are no votes by city councils. It's denials that serve as these trigger points. I think that the city clearly hasn't said no. They haven't denied that there's a path towards exploring the viability of a development at Pleasant Hills. I think they've outlined a process. They've even funded the third-party facilitators. So there's no reason for us to be thinking about what that may look like and what those trigger points may look like. Furthermore, I think the law is still being defined around this process, and really, it's a litigation process and strategy. And I say that because that leads me to my final point, which is that it's not a path that the developers want to take. That it's adversarial, and that I think a lot can be done and a better development can be imagined if we work with the city, if we work with stakeholders, if we work with community leaders and try and develop a scope of a project and study it and work together to see what can be improved. I think that's our overarching goal here, which is really the antithesis of this builder's remedy. But as developers and somebody personally that cares about development and is interested in law and politics, it's something we're watching evolve. But the idea of using it is not something I would enjoy or something I would recommend. It seems unclear, messy, and not the best way to build community.
Next, Janet, I promoted you to panelist. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Well, Ryan, thank you. Thank you for that answer. Sorry. Of course they'd start working when I'm wanting to talk. Um, Thank you for that answer. I'm with you 100%. That's not the way to go. That's not the way the community would like to go. And I think what we're doing here today and in the future with the community and city-led envisioning process is going to be helpful. So I'm one of the leaders in D8 and the president of the Evergreen Leadership Neighborhood Association, and we will have you at one of our meetings where we're sort of getting our community up and running on what's going on. We want them to have some, know what's going on first, and then we'd love you to come in and speak. And I know you'll be at the D8 CRT pretty soon. November? Is it November? Pretty soon.
Yes, early November,
But
yes.
Yeah, so I did have one more question. And like Trudy, it goes away when you're promoted. Okay, do you have
Well,
any
I
other?
have some of the questions you've asked here. If I can help with, there was,
I
how will the
have it
developers
now.
themselves be involved in the community engagement process? And will the community have a chance to speak with them and get to know them? And the answer to those last questions are yes. The developers, Tony and Mark, they they're always happy to work with me to arrange a meeting and go out and meet with leaders when it's appropriate. And I have seen them in those meetings and am constantly impressed by their candor. It's why I enjoy working with them. So I know they're happy to come and meet with leaders, especially in D8. But really, they want to hear this feedback, and they're happy to hear it directly. They enjoy what they do, and they're passionate about it.
Thank you. I think
I also envision them having a few minutes to present at the beginning of these community outreach meetings and just introduce themselves, and maybe give a couple slides introducing who they are. It's important to them to convey that they're San Jose residents, that their business is based in San Jose, that they really care about this city. That's something that's important for them to define themselves as. So I think they'd like that opportunity.
my second question was, do you have other close by lands that you're interested in developing that may tie into the project and it would give some specific benefits to this community in this area? D8, D5.
Easiest answer I have, because that's no, just no other sites.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next is a question by Robert. Will there be any applications submitted to the city prior to the conclusion of the city-led community engagement process report to City Council, annexation, preliminary review, formal application, etc.?
Great question. Thank you. There has been, I just was in my presentation that there was a general plan amendment filed in December of last year, of 2022. Between now and the end of the community outreach process, there should be a pre-zoning application filed. And there should be the notice of preparation of the environmental impact review. Those are the three areas of focus between now and the culmination of the community outreach process. It'll be the general plan designation, the zoning, and environmental review. And I think everything else can wait. For a site development permit application can wait until after that community outreach process. I think that the first meeting will inform enough to give the city a project description that can serve as not just a placeholder, but a more vague project description that can fuel the environmental impact report. And as more feedback comes from the following two community meetings, that project description can be tailored, and stemming from that, the environmental review will be more specific to the feedback that we get. But I think there's some information that we can walk away with that first meeting and move that environmental review process forward a little bit, especially in the areas, more geological issues that can be studied without having to know unit count and composition and densities. So that's where we see the planning focus over the next 12 months.
Next, there's a question from Melissa regarding traffic issues. Do the developers have a plan for the appropriate departments and stakeholders involved to make sure that driving, walking, and biking are efficient and safe? Most concerned with the increased traffic at the intersection of White and Tully and traffic on the residential streets of Flint Avenue, Vista Verde Drive, Flint Crest Drive, which are near schools.
I'd say that we absolutely have a plan, and that plan begins with study. And so one of the studies that we'd be looking to undertake and refine, either towards the end of the community engagement process or afterwards, is a traffic impact study. Once we've got a pretty clear indication of the massing and scope of the project, traffic engineers can come in and study what those impacts will be. From there, the study becomes what can be done to improve traffic flow and safety, including pedestrians and bikers. So yes, we have a plan. We're at the very beginning of that plan, and until the project has some definition, we won't know what those impacts. We can't study the impact until we have a clear definition of the project itself. So I'd say that is months off from being kicked off, but that's part of the CEQA process and will be part of the environmental impact report, and will offer plenty of opportunity for the public to weigh in, and for the city of San Jose to have to respond to specific input they get about safety, especially when it comes to all the different streets and corridors that you named. There's plenty of opportunity to be able to refine that process over the next 2 years. Really, the next 2 years of environmental review will obviously we anticipate will be focused a lot on traffic, and I know that's a huge concern. I've driven east to west and west to east in the city for a long time. I've been here my entire life. I know the traffic's a concern, and something we're keenly aware of, and eager to study and see what can be done to help mitigate some of your concerns.
All right. And again, for the audience, I'm reading some questions or comments for others who aren't able to share their audio or video. And Michael Gabler says, my concern is that the community process will be a show to illustrate that the developer interacted with the community. Based on recent city council approvals, they did not listen to the community, but sided with the very rich developer. The first plan of a mixed-use development that includes just shy of 4,000 homes would absolutely decimate the quality of life in this neighborhood. That said, I do hope that this is not a show and will be a viable interaction.
I understand.
Did you want to address that comment?
Yeah, of course, I'd love to. And I've had a chance to meet with Michael, and I appreciate the concern. I've often shared that. I mean, I've worked in the city, and I've worked around city politics for my entire career. I understand your concern. I understand exactly what you're talking about. I put a lot of faith in these third-party facilitators to be professional and to accurately capture the input that they hear. But like I said earlier, I think there are opportunities throughout the process to question the assumptions that may have arisen from feedback in the first community meeting that was then used to inform assumptions made to start the second community meeting. I think there's challenges, there's opportunities to go back and challenge those assumptions and make sure that you feel that those concerns were accurately captured, and that they're not minimized, and that they're in writing, and that they're in reports that are going to the city council, who ultimately, has the power to accept this report. So there's a whole nother opportunity for concerns or feedback that maybe you feel wasn't properly captured. There's another process when this goes to city council to be able to voice those concerns and make sure that they're heard, and that they're noted. Sorry, that question went away. I think there's more there.
If you click on the answered tab, you can scroll all the way down and see it again.
Yes. Okay, so yes, thank you. The last point I wanted to make is, when you talk about the unit count of 4,000 homes, and that would decimate the quality of life. I want to strongly iterate that this isn't just an issue of developers versus community interest. I think that the city has a huge interest in what this project looks like and in what is ultimately developed here. And I think that the city will be looking for density on this site, and that's something that the developers will have to respond to, as well as bearing in mind community input, which often is focused on stepping down density and matching with the historic character of the neighborhood, and these are all balances that will need to be made. So we hear what you're saying. About the quality of life in this neighborhood. I think it matters. It matters to the developers. It matters to the city. And we don't want you to think that you're being steamrolled at any part of this process. I think that is a valid concern, and it needs to be constantly tested and balanced and addressed throughout this process, as best we can, in line with what the city wants to see at this site, and the ultimate need for housing in not just the city of San Jose, but in the state of California.
All right, looks like we've got the final question, and that is from Norma Zuniga. Do you have the total number of units proposed for this development, and much parking space included?
No, I do not. And we, as the developer, does not. So the only unit count that I think is really out there and published as part of the County of Santa Clara's housing element that they are approving to send to the state for further approval, but they've included what they foresee as a range of residential units at that site, but that is not a step that developers have been ready to take, given that we haven't received the community input and feedback that we desperately want before we formulate a plan, before we present a plan, and certainly before we give the appearance that there already is a plan, and that it's baked in, and that we're just here to solicit feedback. We we really want to genuinely convey that we're listening to this feedback and want to incorporate it into whatever the first iteration of that proposal is, so that immediately and hopefully community leaders that have had a chance to participate can see that their voices have been heard, and that they're they're being taken under advisement at every step of this development process. That's important to us. So for us to come in and say, here's what the unit count is, and here's how much space we foresee would be dedicated to office commercial or retail commercial, I think gives you the wrong impression of the phase of the process that we're in. Really, this is a chance for us to listen. And so if tonight has served the opportunity to be able to answer some of your questions, but to also make an introduction for further discussions where I can sit and really take notes on what your concerns are and be able to accumulate those. I know your voices matter. I know how much of your time and energy you dedicate to your communities. I'd love to hear more, and I'd love to have more of those substantive conversations to really address those concerns and to be as candid as I can be about the process and the development and the balancing that we have to do with this site.
Janet Holt returned. Janet, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you. And thank you again, Ryan. So as I'm listening to that last answer, Ryan, it brings up some of the, various different things that we are dealing with as a state, as a city, as a neighborhood. And also, you're sort of saying you think the city would like to see more density there. I get that feeling as well. So it sounds like perhaps they're leaning on you for that. But what I wanted to bring up is that may be, but this land, I'm trying to think of how to word it, because I don't remember how to word this well, but just a few months ago, with the prior council, they did sort of an override to this land that was recreational and mitigated as to not for developing houses, or at least it had a lot of constrictions on it. So now this is opened, so we get that. So something's going to go in. I hope that between the developer, the city, and the community, we can come up with something that's just not going to, as the prior person said, decimate the area, because this was not it wasn't on the drawing board. It sort of was there, and then all of a sudden, bloop, here it is, and it's wide open. It's like, no, it's really not. And I think a lot of people might be missing that point. But thank you.
Yeah, I understand. And I really started, actually graduated college and really started working in local politics 20 years ago when the first iteration of this development proposal and the East Evergreen visioning strategy was taking place. And saw all that happening from a couple different perspectives, and saw it dissolve at the end. So I am well aware of the history of the site and the challenges to developing it. I know the city is under a lot of pressure, and that the goals, the arena goals for how much housing needs to be developed over the next 8 years is 62,000 units. And the state has written back twice to its draft housing elements and said they're not good enough. And I found, my takeaway from the second letter from the state was, we don't believe that you are going to do this, that you have the land, and that you have the policy, that you have the mechanisms to be able to make this happen. And we need a lot more information about how you're going to achieve these lofty goals as far as housing. So, there is a lot of pressure on the city. but I don't think that that should take precedent over what the community wants to see first and foremost. But secondly, it doesn't take precedent over the type of development that Tony and Mark want to stamp here and leave here for the community. That's not the conversations that we're having when we talk about what this could look and feel like. Really, this is an opportunity to create community. And, of all the different questions and concerns I've received as I've been meeting with neighborhood leaders over the last 8 months, is that, I think there's a consensus around whatever gets developed here, it needs to be inviting. It needs to pull in the community and not be, a gated off separate development, but an opportunity to create a community space where people can come visit and come shop. And I think there's a lot of ways that we've explored how to be able to do that and what that may look like. So I don't know if we can satisfy everybody's interest, especially when it comes to density. But I think with the density that the minimal densities that will need to be at this site, I think they create a lot of opportunity as to creating a place where people can come and shop and eat and gather. Something that I'm not saying is missing in Evergreen or in East San Jose, but something that can certainly be enhanced. That there could be more of them, and that's a big focus of Mark and Tony's, is leaving something that they can be proud of and that they would want to go to with their families. And so if that's the trade-off to some additional density, that's something we can balance, but also I think a worthwhile benefit of development and economic development here.
All right, and there is one more question. Ophelia Medina says, will open space be incorporated into this project for community use as well? I read this will be a mix of commercial and housing. How will businesses, restaurants be selected? Are there any plans? Will community input be incorporated in this decision?
So the first is open space, and the answer is absolutely. Open space will be incorporated. How much and where and what it looks like are areas where we are seeking input and preferences. But there will be on-site open space, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to do it right. And you and I, Juan, have had just a brief conversation about how open space can be used to really enhance a development and help build community. And I think that this site is special enough that it warrants thoughtful consideration about how it's woven in to improve the community overall. I'm sorry, could you give me the second half of the question? Or the second question?
It says, I read this will be a mix of commercial and housing. How will businesses, restaurants be selected? Are there any plans? And will community input be incorporated?
So I don't have an answer for how they'll be selected, but I would like to say that there's opportunity with community input to specify what type of retail and commercial you'd like to see at the site. I think that's important, and I think that the developers are looking to the local community to define what is missing, perhaps, and what they would like to see. I think in every community in San Jose, there are hopes of what they would like to see, and often dining options are one that rises to the top. I hear grocery stores, I hear pharmacies. I hear a lot of wishes of things that specific neighborhoods have said that they've wanted, and sometimes wanted for a long time. I think that those should be loudly noted within those community workshops, and that significant time should be devoted to defining exactly what that commercial space should look like, even down to the detail of specific businesses and vendors that the developer or a future property manager should go and recruit to come in and fulfill the community's wishes. I think I know there are specifics that neighborhood leaders and community leaders hold in their heart and that they've wanted for a long time. And so if we were able to help deliver, one of those stores at the end of the day, or one of those dining options at the end of the day, I think everyone would feel better about the development and the community space that we've left. So there's certainly opportunity to voice that input. And I think the higher the level of specificity within that input, the better for everybody.
And we do have one more comment, a new comment, which is the city's project site does not have a schedule for the community engagement process and plan. Will you be providing this information soon on the website? Any estimation when you will have this plan completed?
Yeah, let me sit here and do the math and say I think that the city will be signing a contract with a third-party facilitator over the next 3 or 4 weeks. And then there will be, say, a 3 or 4 week onboarding process. And at that point, I think there will be some announcement and more information about a schedule and who may be a community-based organization with which the third-party facilitator will partner to produce those meetings and can give updated clarity on when those meetings will be held. Because I think the initial estimate of October that we've blown past that, and now I think we're lucky if we can hit early December as far as a first meeting. But I expect, at that point, once that schedule and that plan or even agenda for the first community meeting or community workshop is defined, that will go on a website, and that will be a critical part of the outreach process. So yes, and yes to those questions.
All right, it looks like that was the last question. I know there were a few, or quite a few, so thank you for staying to answer all of those. And let me see. Oh, Ada says thank you. Thought there was another comment. So thank you again, Ryan, for taking the time to present. I hope everyone has a wonderful night.